Hi, and welcome. On this channel, we talk a lot about the differences between the traditional school setting and that of the juvenile court and community school alternative settings. Not only are there differences in the day-to-day operations of the court and community schools, but there are also differences in the types of questions that could potentially be asked on an interview for a principal or other administrator for a court and community school. If you are a candidate for an administrative position, or you are going into the court and community school setting to do leadership work, then you want to stick around for questions that could potentially be asked that may be a bit different than you would expect in the traditional interview situation. But before we get into the questions that we'll discuss today, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sabani Parcells. I have 25 years of educational experience, including 16 years as an administrator and many years as a principal in a court and community school setting. On this channel, we talk about of course, differences between the alternative school and traditional schools. We talk about considerations that principals in the court and community schools would need to think about, and we come up with solutions of how to navigate the very complex and very different school setting that is court and community schools. So if these sound interesting to you, if you are an administrator that is in an alternative school and want to learn more about the environment or get help or advice about what to do in the setting, then you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and get into the discussion for today. I will talk about 3 questions that could potentially be asked to an administrator or a potential principal of a court and community school. So the first question would be, as the instructional leader, what is one strategy that you would use to affect a positive change towards student academic progress? This is a question that could potentially be asked and is an important question because of the student population that is often enrolled in court and community school settings. Students enrolled in the court and community school often come with lots of challenges, including academic, and it is important to really understand the background, have some history of student achievement when you are thinking about answering this type of question. So for example, students who enter court and community schools often have very challenging backgrounds. They may have suffered trauma. They have often missed lots of school, and there are academic gaps when they arrive on the campus. So one approach or one strategy that a principal may implement is to implement trauma-informed practices. And that would include making sure that your staff is aware of trauma-informed practices, making sure that the academics and just the way that teachers are approaching students from a place of trauma-informed understanding. And this means that teachers understand how the stressed brain works as opposed to the learning brain. Teachers understand that students may be triggered by certain curriculum. They may be triggered just from how they're feeling or what's going on with them in a particular day. And it's important that staff know how to provide a safe space for learning, not to push when students are feeling triggered or feeling upset, and just to really understand what is going on with students and have tools and resources that are trauma informed to support those students. As well, a second approach or strategy that the principal may use is to really take a deep dive into data with the staff, and that is looking at both satellite, map level, and street data. So summative and other state level, high level exams would be your satellite data. And those are important in that they give a big picture of how students might be achieving in math, English, and potentially science. So although these tests don't give a lot of details about a student, they do give an overall picture of how a student's academic progress is moving along. And so looking at several years of summative assessment could help the administrative team and the staff understand what areas need to be addressed and what supports students overall would need. So that is just looking at just high level data that is available if students were present or were able to take those tests. Of course, they are typically during one period of the year over a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And if students have challenges, which many of them do, then they may not have data from a prior year because they were out or not engaged in school at the time. Satellite data could help, may help if that information is available. Next would be map data, which is what teachers are observing in their classroom, really informal observations of student work, teacher tests, teachers' assignments, monitoring students or observing students when they work with others. That's a little bit closer to what students are doing and how they're performing in the moment. So that data is definitely more valuable. Teachers have access to that information, and it's a lot more up to date than perhaps a summative test, state test. So looking at teacher work, student work, or teacher assessments and student work as a staff, and kind of getting the detailed information about what needs to be supported and what students need is a great form of data. And then finally, street data is more of the specifics of the individual student. And street data can be gathered by looking at a student's cumulative folder, talking with the student or the families, finding out about the specifics of the student's background in terms of academics or maybe movement from one school to another, and just getting that information that really impacts how a student is doing academically. That could really help the team understand what is going on with the student, why there are gaps, what happened with some of the deficits that may be there for the student. So together with satellite map and street data, the team could have a great place to start thinking about next steps that would move the academic needle forward for students. So a third strategy that an administrator could use to affect positive changes in student academics is to focus on building one foundational skill at a time. And that could include looking at reading comprehension or number sense and really focusing on that with the staff, making sure that the staff has professional development that is centered around best practices, research-based practices that will really help build those foundational skills for students. And then going into an inquiry cycle where the staff will plan and then they come up with a plan, act on that, assess where they are, they do some reflection and adjustments, and then they start the cycle over again. When a staff is really focused on one area at a time, then they are able to really build and close some of the gaps that students may have, and also to move progress for students in really fundamental areas like reading and math. So a second question that could be asked of a candidate that is interviewing for a principal in Court and Community Schools is, discuss your experiences working with multidisciplinary teams. What did you learn from that experience? it's important to think about in past roles any situation where you worked with different agencies in a collaborative way, where you build relationships and you work together to support students or support others as a team with colleagues in different disciplines. So in court and community schools, it is the norm for the school and probation, mental health, the medical team, and others really to come together and discuss how to move students forward and what plan is needed to help young people be successful. So because this is such a huge part of being an administrator in the court and community schools, it's important to have some experience working with these teams. In traditional settings, principals often work in silo, or there may be another assistant principal or someone from the educational field that is working collaboratively together. However, in court and community schools, it is typical for an administrator to work with other agencies, with other leaders, partners who have as much interaction and contact with the students, with the young people, as the school department does. So that is a question that a candidate really wants to think through, come up with examples, experiences in the past that can really be elaborated on in the interview to relay that you have experience working in that setting or in that collaborative space. And then finally, a third question that could potentially be asked in an interview is, how will you manage the day-to-day oversight of multiple programs? And I talk a lot about the idea that court and community school principals have multiple sites. Those multiple sites many times have very different student populations in terms of their needs or the security around those sites, and just many other aspects that could be different at each site. So for a court and community school principal, being able to go from site to site, understand what is happening, and effectively manage and oversee those sites does take planning, and it takes understanding. So how a manager can handle the multiple sites would first be to keep really an updated calendar and to follow that with fidelity outside of emergencies, and also remaining flexible, having that framework of a calendar that will denote when the administrator will go from site to site, being consistent with those times and days, having staff meetings and staff professional developments calendar, making sure that it's a priority to meet with core partners, for example, probation, mental health, and others that the principal will be working very closely with from day to day. That's important. Making sure that calendar has time for not only staff meetings, but also staff check-ins with the admin assistant staff or the paraprofessionals and other staff members that also need the administrator's attention, and it needs to be intentional and scheduled because, of course, the school counselor and school psychologists, paraeducators, those staff members have different needs and will need the administrator's attention. So if all of those things are calendared, then that would benefit the principal in staying effective and on top of the oversight of the multiple schools. The next consideration would be to assign a head teacher at each site. In the multiple sites, there are times that emergencies happen, or partners who are leaders at those particular sites need support, they need information from the school, and the principal is not always available because there are other places to be, other sites that will take the principal's attention. So in those cases, if the principal is not available to handle the day-to-day at particular sites, then having a head teacher in place is really important. And the head teacher, of course, should be someone who is a teacher leader, someone who has had many years or has experience or really good understanding of the court and community schools program, and your program in particular. It's someone who others respect and will follow, and who can take charge and understand how to make decisions, difficult decisions, if they are unable to get in contact with the principal, and at the same time keeping the principal aware and up to date about things that are happening at the site. And that is also, by the way, another group of individuals that would need time with the principal to discuss what is happening at particular sites. So the head teacher would act as a liaison between the core partners at their site and the principal. And then the third way to be effective with multiple sites is to have regular communication with staff and others. And principal may want to put together a bulletin, whether it's a weekly bulletin, a daily bulletin, so that staff kind of knows what is happening overall in the program or at particular sites. The principal could also produce a newsletter that could go out to not only the staff but also to families and partners, that highlights important dates or events or staff members, and all of the information that would be important to the community and to staff would go into a newsletter. That could also be weekly or monthly or bi-weekly, depending on how the principal wants to communicate and how often. And then, of course, regular staff meetings and other staff check-ins would be an important way for an administrator to communicate with staff and with others. So those are the 3 questions that could potentially be asked. Let's go ahead and do a review of those. First would be a question about being the instructional leader, and how in this really challenging situation with students who often come in with lots of academic gaps, how would you as the principal, what is one strategy that you would use to move academics forward for your students? The second question would be to discuss your experience working with a multidisciplinary team, and then talk about what you learned from that experience. And finally, how would you manage the day-to-day operations or oversight in the program, which could potentially have 3, 4, 5 different sites? Okay, so those are the questions. I hope that you got lots of good information from this discussion. If you are interviewing for a principal position at a court and community school, then really think about these questions. If you want to get some advice or help with a question that you have concerning going into a new environment, court and community school environment, then leave a comment for me in the comment section, and I will be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Also, if you got value out of this video, please give this video a like and share it with someone that also might need this information. Also, subscribe to this channel, and you can turn on notifications. I will post a video at least once a week so that you get more and more information about the day-to-day, the operations of working as a leader in a court and community school. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you the next time.